Why is that?
Player.
Why is that? Why is that?
Posted in.
Why is that? Why is that?
Player. I'm posted up.
Why is that? In this passion, why is that? Trying to see what you're asking. Is it trying to be grabbing? Is you trying to be snatching? Is you after something that you ain't usually having? I'm dope. Why is that? I'm cool. Looking at it like if you even know the rules. Why is that? Do you know the rules? I'ma ask first, man. I'm not a fool, man. I'm cool, dripping down, man. Like I came out the pool. Hold up.
Why is
she
that?
not?
Why is that?
Out of mind for feeling that she could roll up.
Why is that?
With a player like my kind of my time. Cause I got that hold up. Why is that? Make her focus and break it down.
Why is
Make
that?
her roll up. She was like, can I break it on you now?
Why is that?
Break it.
Why is
4,
that?
3, 2, 1.
Why is that? Why is that?
Are you feeling like you won?
Why is that?
Feeling like you winning?
Why is that?
I'm feeling like you could overcome. Why is that?
Why is that?
Why is that?
Why is that?
Why you feel like you can roll? Why you feel like you can know? And you can hold?
Why is that?
On to a player like me.
Why is that?
Why you feel like you can?
Why is that?
Really have yourself a G?
Why is that?
Why you feel like I'm the next?
Why?
I'm no rebound.
Why?
You can't play with a G.
Why is that? Why is that?
This down.
Why is that? Why?
I wasn't born last week.
Why is that?
I get around.
Why is that?
Why is that?
Why is that?
Why is that?
Why
is that?
Why is that?
It's cash counting.
Why is that?
Cartel.
Why
we count stacks?
Why is
we
that?
count stacks?
Why is
would I
that?
stop that?
Why is that?
You wasn't round table rounding that.
Why is that?
Bounding that.
Why is
trying to bound, trying to
Why is
band.
that? Why is that? Why is that?
Is you trying
Why
to
is
rebound a man?
Why is
New
that?
China.
Why is that?
Nah, we ain't
Why
doing
is
that.
Why?
Never ever.
Why is that? Why is that?
You can
Why
ask
is
a nipple.
that?
Why is that?
Why is that?